It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and here to talk about what really happens after we die. And the subtitle of the book is great. Dr. Jim Papandrea, thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be on the show.
What really happens after we die? In the subtitle, there will be hugs in heaven. It's just great. How do you know so much about this? Have you ever died?
No, I have not. I'm not one. It's a fair question, though. I'm not one of those people who have had a near-death experience or a death experience. I am one of those people who has studied the scriptures and the church fathers and some of the writings of our popes, and this book is the result of that research.
So after all of the research, how do you feel about people that have had these near-death experiences or have come back from the dead? Do they seem to match up with the church teaching, or does it seem like maybe you're a little skeptical?
Well, it's hard to say because, some of these stories that you hear about and even that books have been written about later turn out to be frauds and not actually real, true stories. Some of them tend to sound a little bit more New Agey than actually Christian. But then the ones that seem authentic, they don't spend very much time in eternity before coming back. And so what my book is really about is sort of the long-term big picture of eternity, especially what we call the resurrection of the body, as we say in the Apostles' Creed. And so, that's really sort of the end game of eternity. And that's what this book is about.
So in the Creed, we say we believe in the resurrection of the body. So what are we talking about whenever we talk about the resurrection of the body? What does that mean?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that as human beings, our bodies are an essential part of who we are. And, there was a sense back in the days of the early church, and now we're seeing that again, that, people believe that we are sort of a mind trapped in a body, or that we are a spark of the spiritual or even a spark of the divine that's trapped in this prison of the flesh, and that our goal is to be released from it. But that's not a Christian idea. That's actually a pagan idea. And the church has always taught that our bodies are an essential part of who we are, which means that even though our bodies and our spirits will be separated for a while at death, the ultimate redemption of ourselves as whole persons is to be reunited, soul and body. And so when we talk about the resurrection body, we're talking about that reuniting of the body with the soul that we sort of see in some ways in Jesus' own resurrection.
So will our resurrection look like Jesus, or was his special because he's God?
Yeah, I think the answer is both. I mean, in some ways, he is the prototype for our resurrection, and his resurrection makes ours possible. In other ways, he's unique because since he had no sin, his body did not suffer decay, and ours will, of course. So when we die and our bodies are put in the ground, they will begin to decay for most of us. But even so, then we're told in Scripture and in the Church Fathers that God will raise our bodies and bring them back together, bring them back to our spirits, and our bodies will be reunited with our spirits, the same bodies that we had in life, and yet a transformed version of that body, a perfected and fully redeemed version of that body. So it's a bit of a paradox, but this is what the Church teaches.
And then what happens in that interim time? So like the saints that are in heaven now, are they experiencing that with their bodies, or are they waiting on their bodies until some future point?
Right. That's a great question. They do not have their bodies. They have not experienced the resurrection yet. And the proof of that is that their relics are still here with us. The pieces of their bodies that they've left behind that we venerate as relics are still here. So we know that they have not experienced the resurrection, with one exception, of course, and that is Mary. Mary is assumed into heaven with her body. So other than Jesus, she is the only person who has experienced the resurrection already. The rest wait until the end of time. Even the saints wait for that time.
We're talking with Dr. Jim Papandrea. The book is What Really Happens After We Die. There will be hugs in heaven, which I think we can all be happy about. There will be hugs. Will there be ice cream?
Well, I hope so. But the question about whether we will eat and drink in heaven is still an open question. I talk about that in the book, and we know from Jesus' teaching that we will not need to eat for sustenance. We will not need to drink because we won't be thirsty. But yet he does say things like, he will drink the wine in the kingdom, and the kingdom is presented as a banquet, and he talks about the kingdom as a party. And so there does seem to be a sense in which the enjoyment that we get from eating and drinking, and especially the fellowship that we enjoy with each other while eating and drinking, that is going to be a part of the kingdom of heaven.
And Jesus ate in his resurrection when he was on earth, at least.
That's right. And I think part of the reason that the gospel writers make a point to tell us that is to show us that his resurrection was not just some sort of spiritual, ghostly return, but that it was, in fact, a bodily resurrection.
You have so many great teasers on the back of the book with these great questions. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but maybe you can just pique our interest a little bit more. You mentioned ghostly. You addressed the question, are ghosts real? What's it's so interesting because when I started this research, I fully expected the church fathers and others to say, no, ghosts aren't real. But that isn't actually what they say. The church fathers believed in ghosts, and even, talking to respected priests, clergy, and other church leaders today, what I find is that there is in the church the possibility of what we would call ghosts or even hauntings. But what we have to keep in mind is that those of us who are believers and who are devoted to Jesus and the church, we're not going to become ghosts, because if you think about the Christmas Carol and Jacob Marley's spirit coming back to warn Ebenezer Scrooge, that's what a ghost is. A ghost is someone who is not going on to salvation, but someone who is so attached to this world that they can't let go. And so if there are ghosts, and whatever they are, you don't want to be one, Yeah, and I suppose movie depictions are not necessarily the definition of real ghosts, if they do.
Well, that's true, but I think in some ways Dickens got that one kind of right, in the sense that if someone is going on to be saved, they aren't going to be hanging around here.
But maybe the Patrick Swayze version is a little off.
Right. Yes, I agree.
So would our resurrected bodies be comparable to like a superhero body? I mean, in the Gospels, Jesus is walking through walls and things like that. Is that something that we would be able to do?
That's a great question. I'm not sure we can answer that for sure. I will say that our resurrected bodies will be perfected versions of our bodies. And so, we know from Scripture that in the kingdom of heaven there will be no suffering, no tears, no need, no want, no hunger. And so those aspects of bodily life won't exist. And in that sense, our bodies will be perfected and raised for the sort of spiritual existence in the kingdom of heaven. And that's why Paul refers to the resurrection body as a spiritual body. So we don't know to what extent, for example, the martyrs may retain their scars of their martyrdom as trophies of victory over death. But we do believe, and the church fathers taught, that those who, for example, lost limbs those limbs will be restored to them, and those who experience suffering and lack in their bodies now, those things will be perfected. And so I guess in some ways you could see it as a super version of this body, but it exists to be the interface with our loved ones and the saints and the others who will be there with us in heaven, because just as our bodies now are the interface for our spirits with creation and with each other, it will be that way in the kingdom as well.
And as much as you were able to find in your research and unpack in this book, there's still a lot of mystery. There's a lot of things that we don't know. Why do you think it is so mysterious? Why do you think that Jesus didn't spell out exactly what things were going to be like? We'd all have some kind of vision of it. Maybe there'd be a trailer that we could watch on YouTube so that we knew what to expect and be like, oh, yes, that is what I want. I will do whatever it takes on this earth so that I can experience that. Why so much mystery?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the only thing I can say is that I think that if it was given to us in that way, we probably wouldn't have the capacity to understand it. It would be like, an adult trying to explain to a fetus what life is going to be like outside the womb, or a butterfly trying to explain to a caterpillar what it's like to fly. I mean, the experience of the limited experience of the caterpillar just would not allow it to really understand what the butterfly is trying to communicate. So, the butterfly, in order to communicate to the caterpillar, has to become a caterpillar, which is why God had to become human in order to communicate to us in our limitation, and that's what Jesus did.
So I guess the other side of the coin would be to say, why is any of this important? If we're going to be with God, shouldn't that be enough? I mean, should we even be worried about this or curious about it at all?
Well, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. I mean, we do need to reiterate to people that our bodies are an essential part of who we are, because what we would call a Gnostic view of humanity that says that we're sort of a mind only or a spirit only, that can very easily lead people to ignore their own bodies, to abuse their own bodies, or to ignore the bodies of others. And we're called to be involved in the corporal acts of mercy. And, one of the reasons why that's important and that's an essential part of our faith is because, we are embodied people and bodies matter. And so we cannot sort of just let society keep going down this road toward Gnosticism and toward this pagan view of what humanity is. I mean, we even see like a lot of science fiction now going down this road to presenting the idea that, your consciousness could be preserved in a computer after you die, or your consciousness can be taken out of one body and put into another. And all of these things really run against what the church teaches and what Jesus embodied in the incarnation.
Well, this is also fascinating. I could probably ask another 400 questions about this, but we'll just tell people to check out the book. Where is the best place to get it?
Yeah, so the best place is to go to sophiainstitute.com. The book comes from Sophia Institute Press, so sophiainstitute.com. It's right there.
All right. And you've got a bunch of other books available as well. People can find those at drjimsbooks.com. That's doctor spelled out. drjimsbooks.com. You're just pumping out these books. So many of them. So people check it out. And definitely check out this one, What Really Happens After We Die. There will be hugs in heaven. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Dr. James Papandrea, for sharing it with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.